Welcome to the Wedding Songs Podcast, featuring newly released songs you need to know and the tried and true classics. Get song ideas from the time guests arrive until the last dance of the reception. And now your host, Matt Campbell, founder of MyWeddingSongs.com.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wedding Songs Podcast. I am Matt Campbell, and today we're going to be talking about non-alcoholic weddings. To help me with that, I have Riley Mullane from Iowa. He is from Ann and Ellis, and also wedding DJ Riley Mullane. So welcome to the show, Riley.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this ever since the invitation.
Yeah, I think it's an important topic. And even though we are the Wedding Songs Podcast, everybody's thinking about music and how they can have the ultimate party even without alcohol.
Sure. Well, we were talking a little bit before we started the podcast, and I've always been an open book with pretty much everything I do with my business specifically. I think it's important for any wedding DJ to earn that trust and earn that excitement overall from a client. And I feel like the best way throughout my 17, 18 years as a wedding DJ specifically, the best way for me to have earned that trust and excitement with those clients is being very honest about who I am. And as you know, and I'm sure as all the DJs listening and even those that you've interviewed would know, that this is unlike any other business transaction you're going to have. This isn't like buying a book or buying a pair of shoes where the transaction is done. You have what you want, they have what they want, and it's done. It's like, that's just the beginning. And so it's all of those intangibles that I talk about with clients where I think that value is found. And I've been very open about my struggles with alcohol. I'm going on 2.5 years sober, and it was one of the best decisions that I've ever made. And I've had a lot of fellow wedding professionals in and outside of the wedding DJ industry, but some photographers and planners, and the list goes on, reaching out, wanting to talk a little bit more about that journey. And knowing that I'm putting that on YouTube and knowing that I'm putting that on Instagram and Facebook, I think for some people it can be scary because they don't want to expose some of those vulnerabilities. But I think it's important to be who you are, and I've always made mention of that even during consultations, that I'm not a drinker. So I'm not going to be the wedding DJ that is going to be drunk at 7:15 at night and looping the same song over and over, or saying your last name incorrectly, or,
Right.
Again, all of these horror stories that I'm sure we've all heard about. I've been very happy with the response of just being honest. I think that's important in life. Being honest, be who you are.
Yep. And I think that, as a side note, we're right in January, and something that started fairly recently that I'm going through is dry January. And
Yeah.
a lot of people are doing that. And first of all, congratulations on your sobriety. I have family that has those struggles as well. And I think being upfront and telling your story will help others.
Yeah. It's all fun and games until kids come into the picture, and then they start to pick up on certain habits that, if you continue with those habits, it's going to turn into somewhere down the line, it's going to turn into a habit for them. Maybe it's not drinking, but it's denial of something that is negative. And I wanted to be the best example for them as possible. And don't get me wrong, I envy those that can drink in moderation, like my wife, or I have several friends that can have a drink here, a drink there, and like they're done, right? And they just do it in social settings. To me, it was just a whole new level. I never drank at weddings. That's what's also kind of interesting, Matt, is in my 600 and some weddings that I've DJ'd, not one time did I ever drink at those. It was a light switch that I could turn off, and I wasn't bringing a flask with me or going back in the storage closet and sipping a drink here. I still take DJing weddings very seriously. It's what pays our bills. It's what gives me and our family the freedom and flexibility to live a life that we want. And I don't take that for granted at all.
Well, let's get a little less deep, and let's start off with our icebreaker question. Can you share a heartwarming wedding moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had a conversation with a buddy of mine, Russ Collins, who's a DJ out of Northwest Arkansas. Really, really good dude, doing some incredible things with his business. And I shared with him a turning point in my career was when I DJ'd a wedding. This had to have been, I would say, at least 15 years ago. And it was at a very modest community center. They did not have a lot of money to spend at all on their wedding. They were an incredible couple, very sweet, very kind, very much in love, so easy to talk to. And, going into a venue like that, I'm sure you've been a part of weddings where they had an unlimited budget, and you walk into these huge, grandiose kind of ballrooms, and it has a feel to it. And it's a lot of fun to be a part of those. But this one was, definitely more modest. And so they had catering on a budget, and very little floral and very little decorations and a very modest head table. And so anyways, I got there. I'm like, all right, here we go. Let's do this thing. And so the night continued and had a really great time with them. And at the end of the night, they came up and said, looking around the room, as you can tell, Riley, we didn't have a really big budget at all. We had to pay for the wedding ourselves, and we decided to invest the majority of our budget in you because we really trusted you. And we knew that the impact that you were going to provide for us and our wedding and our guests was going to be something that was worth every single penny. And it was at that point that I knew my role in this industry was to treat every single client that way. No matter what their budget was, you should never overlook the kind of impact you have as a wedding or event DJ. There's people listening and watching at those events that you don't know are watching and listening to the things that you're doing. And weddings are expensive, right? I mean, I think it's just so easy for us wedding professionals to say, this is our price and this is what things cost. And we get in the groove and we get in the habit of just kind of overlooking those costs a little bit. But it's significant, especially in today's world, today's economy. I mean, things are expensive. And so when people are going out of their way and they trust you and they trust the kind of value you bring to the table, it kills me when I see DJs taking those things for granted. It really, really does. So when I train and I coach the DJs, I spend a lot of time talking about what sort of character and integrity we should have as DJs. So shout out to those individuals that changed my entire trajectory of my DJ career.
That even reminds me of Vegas because we're the quote unquote wedding capital of the world. And there's an average of 200 weddings every single day here. And exactly what you're saying, that I remember going to a meeting and it was the officiant or the venue and they're saying, oh, you're couple number one, couple number two. And you just cannot do that. And you have to have that philosophy of this is their moment and you have to treat it as there's no other retakes.
You really do. You really do. And you have to feel the essence of what that day means to them. Yep. And I think it's easier to do when you're a DJ that is married and you remember your own wedding day and just how important that day was for you. So I try to kind of channel the same emotions that I had on my wedding day, which I was a nervous wreck, to be honest. And I was in the industry for a long time leading up to that point. This is 2012. We got married. It's just like, where are these nerves coming from? Like, I know how things are going to go. I've been a part of a million ceremonies, but you're nervous and you lose track of time and you're bombarded with people and they're looking for somebody to help guide them down this path of a successful wedding. So
it's funny. I interviewed Maria Romano, who's an officiant, and we talked about the importance that the officiant plays because they have to relax the couple because they are so nervous, whether it's telling a joke or whatever that is. It's funny. When I got married, our pastor said the we-ness and the us-ness. And I was just sitting there, what did he just say?
I've officiated a lot of weddings. I don't market myself as an officiant, but when I work with couples, they can't find anybody, or, they're just a super fun couple, kind of quirky, and they just want things different in comparison to other weddings they've been to. And they ask, and they've seen pictures of me officiating. That's how I typically have landed some of the gigs. They've just seen things that I've done. And I tell, listen, the ceremony, in my humble opinion, as a wedding DJ, I think the ceremony is the catalyst for everything else to come throughout the night. And again, it kills me when I see officiants that are marketing themselves as officiants and they are treating the couple like a number. They're not practicing. They're stumbling over their names. They're saying their names incorrectly. They're going out of order. Come on, this is a production. It doesn't have to feel like a production, but it should feel very organic and it should feel very natural. And people listening and watching you as the officiant should notice how prepared and comfortable you are so the couple can kind of acclimate to your environment.
100%. So you mentioned officiating. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you and all of your media projects that you have going on?
Yeah. I am a very multifaceted person when it comes to being in the wedding industry. I started off as a wedding DJ and still very much enjoy weddings. There was a couple times in my career where I was going to quote retire and work on other things. And I did work on a ton of other things and found a lot of fulfillment and enjoyment. But I was continuing to get inquiries and leads from couples that maybe had a sister that got married where I DJ'd, or, friends and family. And so I never turned that valve off. And I even put out actually a Facebook video, a big Facebook video thanking everybody. It was like in 2022, and starting in 2023, I'm no longer booking weddings. And people are like, yeah, you and I both know that's not true, right? And think I did 25 weddings in 2023 and a handful going into this year, 24 and beyond. So wedding DJing has been my main economic engine for everything I've done in my life. And I have learned so much about myself. I've learned so much about human patterns and behavior and just kind of this psychology when it comes to human nature. And that is something that I think a lot of wedding DJs start to understand the more they're in the industry, as they start to recognize certain things that a lot of people maybe don't realize we recognize as DJs. Now, that being said, I linked up with a really, really good friend of mine and my business partner, and we run a wedding and event agency called Ann and Ellis. And so her middle name is Ann, my middle name is Ellis. So Ann and Ellis, there you go. And she owns two really popular wedding venues called Ashton Hill, one in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and one in Galena, Illinois. Galena is a tourist town. It gets 1.4 million tourists a year. It's kind of like a little Aspen without the mountains, basically, but it is a very boutique town, kind of like out of a Hallmark movie. So she built a venue there in 2020, which was perfect timing through COVID, right? But she made it, and she's on the other side of that, thank the Lord. And so we linked up roughly 10 years ago. We started to get to know each other really well, personally, professionally. And she is one of the kindest, smartest, Megan Knatz, she is fantastic, one of my best friends. And so anyways, we took the ball, we started to run with it as far as gaining and gathering. If you think of it as a preferred vendor list, but it's so much deeper than that. So when somebody, I'll give you the 30-second version of how Ann and Ellis works, because I think this is very much scalable. Not that we would want to do it, but for anybody that maybe is owning a wedding venue right now that could be listening that wants to try this out, we did like this pilot program. So when any couple would tour the venue, they would have a really great tour experience and champagne and dessert and all of these things. Made them feel very special, as they should feel very special. They're spending a lot of money on a venue. And then after they book, they meet with one of our team members, our kind of a wedding consultant. All of that is free. We would spend 2 hours, sometimes longer with these couples, and we would establish their budget. And some might say, okay, our budgets, I'm making numbers up here, $30,000. Okay, great. I want a DJ. I want a cinematographer, a photographer. And then we would start to dive deeper and deeper into what sort of catering they wanted, what sort of photography. I want light and airy, and I want a really moody cinematic feel for our video. On the back end, we had a stable of really, really great wedding vendors, and we would sell on their behalf. We would be an advocate. We didn't do their contracts for them and anything like that, but we would say, here's how much these individuals cost, but here's why they cost what they cost. And so the majority of our couples, they were booking 80% of their wedding within a couple weeks because we were getting them everything they wanted. We weren't saying, okay, you're looking at a $2,500 DJ. Well, here's a bunch of $5,000 DJs. We're not trying to upsell them. We're trying to get them what they want, as an agency would do. Think of it as a real estate agent. If your budget for a house is $400,000, again, making numbers up, I'm not going to show you a bunch of $1 million houses because you're just going to be let down when you see the price. And so our couples would really, really, really be receptive to that. And we're like, oh, we're on to something here. And so we continued to grow our agency. I'm pretty detached from that only because we have a team that's doing that, which is fantastic. We've done the training, we've done, the sales side and the educational side of what we do. And that's running very, very well. And then the other side of that, Megan and I started a podcast, the Ann and Ellis podcast, which you can find on YouTube. Just search Ann and Ellis. I think we're at 64 episodes. Last week, we actually started to switch our format, which is going to be very business focused. We've shortened the time of our podcast. We just get in, get out. We talk about how to build a network and how to create a mastermind and what you should be saying during that initial consultation and the importance of this and the importance of that. And then I have a YouTube channel. And then, of course, Instagram is just at Riley Mullane. I'm very easy to find because I go by my first and last name for everything that I do. But that channel is all about the purpose-driven wedding DJ. So if you're somebody that is maybe year 1, year 2, maybe you're year 10 or 15 or 20 and you've lost your purpose and you don't know why you still DJ weddings. Maybe it's just money. Maybe it's just something that you do because you're scared you can't do anything else in life. And trust me, I've felt that way too. Like without DJing, who am I? Like I'm a shell of myself. Like music is so embedded in who I am. That channel is all about real strategy, like real tools that you can use to open up a conversation with a client, interviewing really great people. I'd love to have you on sometime. And no hype, no gimmicks, all free. And hopefully it starts to develop itself as a really healthy ecosystem for people to come in and leave their ego at the door. And I'm a big believer is like act as if you know nothing, but you want to learn everything. Like that's my mindset going into any sort of learning environment. So yeah, check out Riley Mullane on Instagram and of course the YouTube channel.
Awesome. Thanks. And
Sure.
speaking of that too, I think that the more experience that we have through the years, we really want to give that back to the community. And I feel that that's really what you're doing now too, is giving back to that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an obligation we should all have. We shouldn't be selfish with the things that have worked for us. You know, my goal with all of the DJs that I've trained and continue training and coaching, and I train a lot of more on the business performance coaching side of things with photographers, and I've done venue consulting. And I mean, I've worked with chiropractic offices that have built a new office and they want me to come in and just feel the vibe, right? Like what's the color temperature like in here? What should the music be when somebody walks into the waiting room? Is the individual at the front desk, are they smiling enough? Like what's the first impression? So I've helped produce a lot of events for people, and you know, with the keynote speakers, and I've helped consult with the lighting. I love getting down and dirty in regards to the experience. What is somebody going to say when they leave this event? How did it feel? Because I think it's really easy if you have a bunch of money to make it look a certain way, but where it's really difficult is how can you get it to feel a certain way? That's what I love, is how to give everything you're a part of a feel.
That is a great transition then to our main topic. I love that. What are some common reasons then for having an alcohol-free wedding that you've seen in the past?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've been excited to talk about this. Now, in full disclosure, are the majority of the weddings I DJ dry weddings? No, they're not. Have I DJ dry weddings? Yes, I certainly have. Have those weddings been a success? Absolutely. And I was thinking a little bit, Matt, about this conversation last night before I was going to bed, and trying to use some examples and not just come up with different hypothetical scenarios. Like, so a couple weddings that come to mind in regards to their decision on not serving alcohol, a couple of them were religious based reasons. And so the guests knew that going in. And I think those couples even put on the invitation in an eloquent way, saying, you know, there will be no alcohol served. Again, it was more eloquent than that. And so people just kind of knew what they were getting into. And those types of weddings, I think, are structured the same way. They started this normal time, you know, ceremony at 4:30. I'm always very curious to know across the country, like how ceremony start times, how they vary, right? Because I've talked with some individuals. One was actually in South America. I was talking with a DJ and they were talking about how ceremony started so much later there. But anyways, they did the same ceremony, and then quote cocktail hour was mocktails, right? It's your lemonade, and of course you got your iced tea, but there was some really great mocktails, right? Some, I'm not sure exactly what they were, but there was one that was like a non-alcoholic version of a Moscow Mule and stuff like that. And they had about 150-ish people, I think. And there was a ton of family, a ton of friends that shared the same values, right? Like, I think that's how you can curate a guest list. If you're going to have a dry wedding, maybe take a little bit more time to curate your guest list. So you're not going to be inviting people that are really turned off by the fact that they can't have 18 bush lights at a wedding or high noons. And now don't get me wrong, as a DJ, selfishly, out of pure selfishness, the more people drink, the more people dance. You know, my dad's been in a band for going on 45 years now. I grew up around music. I know exactly how alcohol correlates to music, and it makes for a very good time. There's a reason why they serve alcohol at nightclubs. I mean, it's like, duh. And so I think anytime somebody thinks about a dry wedding, they're like, oh gosh, this is going to be such a bust and nobody's going to dance. Everybody's going to be stuffy. It was quite the opposite in my experience. They set their expectations. They were true to who they were, and their guests respected that. And then I was thinking about a couple of different examples. I had the privilege of DJing. I've DJed a lot of weddings for athletes, some that have been in the NFL, some that were an exceptional Division I athlete, but I've DJed for whatever reason. I have DJed quite a few weddings for Iowa wrestlers. And a lot of the wrestlers, they don't drink, and they are of such sound mind and their body, and they treat it like an instrument. And it was wild for me to see 15, 20 wrestlers along with their significant others and some of their parents that were wrestlers. They didn't drink at all. And so the bar, now were they serving alcohol? Yes, but very, very, very few people were drinking, and they were having the time of their life because they've just conditioned themselves to not need it, right? They don't look at it as an accessory to their party.
Well, and I think that is such a misnomer where everybody thinks that they have to have alcohol just to have a great party. And that's why I want to have you on here, because that is so false that you can have a great party with limited, or maybe you're not having the hard liquor, you're having the bush lights, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always try to be self-aware enough to know and understand, like, I never want to come across, well, because I don't drink, nobody needs to drink. Like, I never have ever judged anybody for doing the things that they want to do in their lives. Same goes for clients, by the way. I can't tell you how many times I've worked with clients that are very introverted throughout the entire planning process, and they start to get a few drinks in them, and they are a completely different person. Go figure, right? Alcohol kind of can bring out the best or worst in some people, but they turn into a much more, again, outgoing personality, but just everything kind of shifts a little bit. So I don't judge those individuals. I just look at my own path and how I can help kind of guide others through whatever situation that they're in. And again, with clients, it's no different. And I talk a lot about the reality of what a wedding day is going to look like with clients. I tell them, try to eat something in the morning. I mean, because the emotions and the nerves and the anxiety will get the best of some couples. And by the time 7 o'clock rolls around, they're so intoxicated that, it's terrible. But I've had some clients that they were surrounded by a wedding party that were a wedding party, like actual party. And
Right.
they were having a hard time getting through their first dance, getting through their toast, getting through parent dances. I've had parents that were too intoxicated to share a dance with their son or daughter during that time. And it's like, man, that is so disappointing. What do you do? But
Yeah, that's so tough. Time for a quick break from the show to let you know about the Wedding Music Letter. Are you struggling to find the wedding songs that match your personality and music style? Are you having a hard time keeping up with the new wedding songs being released? Then subscribe today to the Wedding Music Letter by going to my website, myweddingsongs.com, and clicking on the Join Now button. Every Wednesday, you'll get song ideas to build your wedding playlists. On the last day of the month, you'll get all of the new wedding songs released from the prior month. So subscribe today and join over 7,000 other engaged couples and wedding pros by going to myweddingsongs.com and joining the Wedding Music Letter today. Now back to the show.
in some capacity, there is a sober movement happening. I'm not saying like everybody has to hop on that train. It was just something that was right for me because I knew it wasn't going to end well. But you go into even breweries now, there are a ton of non-alcoholic options. You go into any sort of grocery store, you go into a liquor store. I mean, it's wild how many non-alcoholic choices there are that, by the way, taste. I mean, I would love to do with somebody a blind taste test to tell me, like, can you really taste a difference here? They're getting real good. Getting real good.
Actually, you brought up the brewery. One of the breweries that I go to here in Vegas, they were promoting the dry January. Here's some options. You can come here, watch the game, but here's some non-alcoholic options that you can have.
Yeah.
So would you change up your wedding playlist because guests are not gathering at the bar per se?
Maybe a little bit. Another thing that pertaining to your question, what I've noticed with some of these dry weddings or the vast majority of the guests and the couple not drinking is they start to add a little bit more of, I'll call them integrations to the day. So maybe they will have photo booth or they will have bags. I think some people call it cornhole. So depending on where you're at in the country, so bags, cornhole, they'll have Jenga, they'll have different types of entertainment for their guests to do. And I typically know if those things are going to be there going into the wedding. So I have an opportunity to talk with the couple to say, and I talk about this during the initial consultation before they've even officially booked with me, to say, okay, here's the reality of what I have witnessed through 600 and some weddings. Number one, there's a big difference between integrations and distractions. And the more you have in that room that can compete with music, and it's okay if there are things there that compete with music, but just please understand that as a DJ, my role in the music that I'm playing might become more secondary than primary. And like, what do you want as a couple? What do you want? And they'll say, well, I want everybody dancing and having a great time. Okay, well then my honest opinion is to limit how many distractions or even you can define them as integrations, but even a photo booth, if the photo booth is placed way back in the corner of the room and not near me, now your guests have to commit. They're going to say, oh, I want to go and dance, but gosh, I've been in line for this photo booth for the last 7 minutes. I'm going to finish this line out, take my picture. And now the dance floor is running at 40, 50% capacity, where I'm like, man, if that photo booth was just closer to me, they could be dancing in line, or they could at least be closer to that dance floor. Or if you have a cigar bar is a big one, because the better the cigar, the longer they take to smoke, right? And you're kind of savoring the flavor, and you don't want to rush through that process. Enjoying the cigar, it's kind of an art form. It takes like 20, 30 minutes to smoke a cigar. And it's like, where is oh, you're out there on the veranda and there's 50 people out there smoking these incredible cigars. And they have a cigar roller that came in from Phoenix. I've had a few of those and they're awesome, but it's like, well, there's nobody dancing. What do you want me to do? So I just try to be very honest with them, like, do whatever you want, but every decision you make will impact the dance floor in some way, shape, or form.
And the further you get away from the dance floor, the bigger impact it's going to have. Like you're saying, outside, if your games are outside, the cornhole's outside, lawn darts or whatever is outside, boy, it's tough to bring those people back in. And it could be, 80 degrees outside, beautiful. They may not want to be on the dance floor, and you just have to accept that as a couple, no matter what music's playing.
You are absolutely right. And some of the newer DJs, they can take that kind of personal, right? Where it's like, you understand what kind of music I'm playing right now? Everybody dances these songs. Like, listen, it's not you. Like, there are times where as a DJ, it's not you. And that's why I try to get ahead of it. And this leads into a whole different sales conversation, which we won't get into, but I try to get ahead of all of those things at the initial consultation to say, here's what could happen. Because I don't want the couple looking at me being like, why is nobody dancing, Riley? Why on earth did we hire you? I thought you said people were going to dance. Well, I didn't know there was 17 other distractions that were happening. I didn't know there was a food truck that randomly showed up that's a quarter mile away that's serving incredible free food for your guests. I can't compete with that. I'm sorry. Usher, is not going to compete with gourmet grilled cheese sandwiches at 9:00 at night.
So what other food things are you seeing in your area? It's so funny because we went to a wedding last year that had a cookie food truck, and it's like, man, this is awesome. But then, like we were talking about, everybody's outside at the food truck.
Yeah. I think, it's helpful that we run an agency, because our agency, as I said earlier, is centered around education. And so we try to get ahead of everything possible. And our day of coordinators are, phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. We have an individual on our team, MJ, and she is, a wedding expert. She's the wedding whisperer for sure. She can tell you about problems before the problems even arise. Like, she can see it 6 months away. Anyways, so we talk about, if you want to do late night snacks, try to make it a limited menu. You don't want guests sitting out there for 30 minutes trying to figure out what they want. Limit the menu, give them 3 options, and let's get on with the night. Because by the time 9:00 hits, which is typically where food trucks show up for late night snacks, we don't see a lot of food trucks for dinner. We typically see served or plated meals or buffet. This is Iowa. We see a lot of buffets. It just is what it is. Even at some of the nicest venues you can imagine, a lot of times it's buffet because it's more economical. And a lot of times our couples aren't looking to win awards for their food. They just want it to be hot, good, nobody's complaining, and get on with the night. Let's get to the party, which again, as a DJ, I love that mentality selfishly. So if we know they're going to be doing certain things like that, we obviously encourage that. We're not going to talk them out of it, but we see a lot of like food trucks that are serving tacos. I've not seen a cookie making building station. I know those are becoming really popular here, like storefront wise. I don't know about you, but there's been a lot of times where I'm like, I'm jealous. I wish I was a guest right now. Like, I don't think these guests quite understand. Like, this is not the average wedding. You guys have, this is crazy.
Yeah.
How far out of
these sliders are awesome. What am I doing wrong?
You guys are so spoiled right now as guests. Jeez. Don't take this wedding for granted.
For sure. So what are other fun ideas that you can incorporate into the wedding to keep people interactive?
Yeah, more from like if you're not serving alcohol.
Correct.
It's a good question. I would say a photo booth for sure. I think if you're going to be removing alcohol, which tends to be a staple at most, I would say it's probably over 90% of weddings across the country, alcohol is being served. So if you're going to be in that 10% demographic, then give your guest options. The more options you can give within reason, the less it feels like something was removed. So throw some things at them that they didn't see coming and that it's like this surprise and delight vibe, right? So I think photo booths are great. We're seeing some really cool modern. We had some salsa photo booths that we really loved through Photo Booth Supply Company. Shout out to them. They're great, but we sold them just because it didn't really fit our business format anymore. Sold them to a local DJ and we recommend him. So they're booking those out like crazy. I would say food stations are great. Guests just, they love variety. It comes back to variety because if you can put yourself in the shoes of a guest, what makes you happy when you go to, whether it's a wedding reception or just anywhere, and you're looking, oh, cool, they have this. Oh, cool, they have that. Oh my gosh, look at that. Oh, that's neat. That's kind of the surprise and delight, and food stations really do that well. I know food stations are, I think, one of the more expensive formats as far as dinner goes. But yeah, I mean, don't shy away from some of those yard games or whatever you can bring inside, giving them not only a variety, but ways the things that they're doing kind of feels like you as the couple. You know what I mean? Like Tom and Tina Smith, this is totally them. Like this makes sense. That's what I love most about DJing weddings is when the wedding feels like the couple. I love that. They're not forcing anything in any sort of direction. It feels very much like the couple. So when couples take chances even during their ceremony and even certain songs, right? I mean, things get a lot of fun when you can customize the day to fit the personalities of the couple. So whatever that means in a physical form, like a game, I'm not one to do like scavenger hunts and things like that. I've done them before. And if a couple is adamant they want to do it, fantastic, let's do it. But like the shoe game, being able to kind of break up the night in a way where it doesn't feel like you're breaking up the momentum of the music that you're playing.
Or breaking the bank. We were talking about food trucks. It seems like every year at the Wedding MBA, our booth is always across from a wall of donuts. And that's something that's less expensive. You could get gourmet donuts, of course, but if you met at Dunkin' Donuts or you met at a coffee shop, that might be something that fits your personality and helps tell your story.
Absolutely. Donut walls are becoming huge. I have seen so many couples choosing not to do their cake cutting. As the years progress and the demographic changes and the things that they would they don't want it to be like their parents' wedding. That's just the reality. They want it to be their wedding. And if they look at cake cuttings and bouquet tosses and garter tosses and certain dances, whether it's a dollar dance, I haven't done many dollar dances at all, but I did 10 years ago. That was like something you did every time. And all of a sudden they were like, we're not doing it anymore. And for whatever reason, okay, fine, perfect. As a DJ, it's easier not to do those things. Then great, don't do those things. And when you can trim some of that stuff off, to me, you just get to the heart of what people are wanting, which is to eat, have a great time, and dance.
Yeah, it's definitely the trend is let's party. Forget all of even the formal dances. Let's get those, I don't want to say out of the way, but get them completed after the grand entrance. So that way, when dinner's over, toasts are done, let's party.
Yeah, agreed. And going back to what I was saying earlier, I would say the one thing that I see the most with dry weddings is that the guests tend to share the same values. They're not alarmed showing up. What do you mean? What do you mean there's no alcohol? What? Yeah. They were very upfront. And again, the guests shared the same values. Now, that being said, because they share the same values, whether it's a religious based value or whatever it is, it's removed. Like it's not even a thing that they're deprived of. And so they get on with it. And I've done, going back to the few that I've done, 100 and 150 people. I mean, they're ready to party. Right. I mean, just a party doesn't have to mean alcohol. I know I sound like an old man when I say a super lame party. You don't have to have alcohol, have fun. I've said many times, alcohol certainly can bring a lot of fun to the party, but you don't have to have it. And I've been very fortunate with the couples that I've worked with. They were partying and dancing and they could hold their own to any other wedding that I've done. And the format did not shift very much. Now, again, musically, did things shift? I mean, maybe a little bit, but not a ton. I would say the majority of what I play is edited anyways. I don't do clubs. I don't do a lot of bar gigs or anything like that. When I first started out DJing, I did. So I'm weddings. 95% of the times I'm weddings, and then 5% are the nonprofits that I MC throughout the year. So everything I'm playing is very much songs you're going to hear on like 80s on 8, 90s on 9, early 2000s. Early 2000s has been the sweet spot over the last 5-10 years. And those are, I don't want to say safe to play, but you know what I mean? I mean, those are, you're not gonna rock the boat with some of those songs, specifically if they are edited. So I didn't find myself backed into a corner holding on for dear life on what am I going to do here. I felt very, very comfortable because the guests and the couple were very comfortable with every decision they made.
Even if it is monetarily decided not to have alcohol because alcohol is very expensive and maybe your family are drinkers, then there's so much variety now, like you mentioned earlier, mocktails. And even I remember growing up just to get a Shirley Temple or a Roy Rogers. I mean, that was the cool thing. Oh my gosh, I'm like an adult now.
Yeah.
I just think that there's less expensive ways to go, but still have fun with the drinks at the reception.
Listen, when you're a kid and you start seeing them put that grenadine syrup in and everything changes. Oh my gosh, this is not your normal cherry Coke. They're actually putting this in it. Or the Shirley Temples with the cherry. And yeah, it was a big deal.
It's so funny. So just to kind of wrap things up, what is one tip that you would give to engaged couples that are planning a wedding? In general, it doesn't have to be a dry wedding.
Yeah, it's a great question. Be yourself. I think, again, the goal when it comes to your wedding planning is having your day truly feel like you as the couple. Don't feel like you have to do anything. That's the beauty of the wedding industry. I feel anyways, is there's no rules. There are no rules. There's zero. There's going to be certain decisions that you make that will impact the flow, but with a good MC, with a good DJ, they can jump over those hurdles pretty easily. So the weddings that I've DJ'd that I would define as an absolute success were ones that had nothing to do with the budget, had nothing to do with how much money they spent to get things to look a certain way, but they were very true to who they were. And that is so important because I think when you look back on your wedding, 15, 20 years, 30 years, you want to remember the things that felt, I'll say, very natural again, right? The song you chose for your first dance or the vows that were read during your ceremony. I don't know 15, 20 years after your wedding if you're obsessing over the one specific flower. And that's no disrespect to florists or zero disrespect to decor companies. That's certainly not what I'm saying, because those things absolutely provide an impact for the guests that are there. However, I just think the memories start to become more refined and it's going to be more and more about how your day felt versus how your day looked, which I know I've said that several times, but that to me is my overall philosophy as a DJ, is getting your day to feel a certain way. I think the best way to get your day to feel a certain way is to make sure that it's a reflection of you as the couple.
It's interesting. It's sharing your love for each other. I haven't spoken about this before, but I just get this vibe as a DJ when you meet couples, the relationships that are going to last. And I think that the ones that do incorporate their personalities, those are the people that are really into each other and listening to each other. And it's like, yeah, the weddings that are the grooms outside and the brides dancing with their girlfriends. It's like, man, I don't know how this is going to work out.
You said it. I mean, yes, you are absolutely right in that initial observation. As a potential vendor that may be involved in that wedding, and you start to pick up on, wow, these guys, they're really in love. Like, what a great couple. That carries through, and just the way they look at each other. And, to me, that's a big reason why I DJ. I mean, there's many reasons why I DJ, but when you're DJing for couples that they found the right ones and they're just having fun with one another. They're not sweating the small stuff. Like, they're collectively agreeing, like, we're not going to worry about this. I had a New Year's Eve wedding. They were a textbook couple, Kelsey and AJ. I mean, textbook. If I could write a book about what sort of couple to be when planning a wedding, they would be on the front. They would be on the cover, and nothing rattled them. They chose really great vendors. The vendors had their back. The vendors have all worked together before. And that's what we try to do with our agency, is to create these all-star teams every single weekend to the best of our ability. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but the couple feels that too. And they can focus on being in love and enjoying one of the best days of their life. And they're always smiling, right? I mean, how great is that when you just see couples that are smiling, they're dancing, like they don't really care what's playing. Oh, great, good to see you. And they're not getting wrapped up in, that centerpiece is crooked, or, why is the utensils not lined up the way they should be? Mistakes happen. As vendors, we're human, right? If AI takes over one day and they can do everything that we were doing, not only as DJs, but as long as we're living and breathing as human beings, there's beauty in the imperfections when it comes to planning a wedding. And couples, they have to embrace that. Nothing about their day will be perfect. And you don't want it to be perfect, because perfection is subjective anyways. Your perfect day is different than my perfect day. Well, the same goes for weddings. Like, what does your perfect wedding day look like? I mean, weather, can't control it. That's a big one here in Iowa. Anyways, it's like they want to get married outside. Well, it's raining, it's downpouring. So you have to kind of mentally accept and internally digest that you only have so much control, no matter how much money you're spending anyways. So let it be, and smile, be in love, kiss one another, enjoy the day, because it's over like that anyways.
Especially the ceremony. That's one tip I give to every engaged couple today is something bad is going to go wrong at your reception. Guarantee it. It just depends on how you handle that situation. And exactly what you're saying. If you just kind of blow it off and, things are going to happen.
Indeed, they do.
Control.
And it can be somebody that is brand new to the wedding industry or somebody that's been doing this for 30 years. We're human. We don't want to make mistakes. We're not laughing in the corner saying, yes, I'm so happy that happened. No, we're mortified too, but you got to rise above it and keep going. And then you also have to remember, this is something I had to get over as a DJ, because I was chasing perfection, and I was having, just a crazy amount of anxiety, and was just making myself sick to death as far as, I want this to be perfect and I don't want to mess up. And oh my gosh, I should have played that song and not this one. Oh, what am I doing? I was beating myself up a lot. That's just kind of the OCD and a little bit of a perfectionist by fault. But when those things happen, 90% of the guests, they don't even realize it's happening. Most of the time, the couple don't even know what's happening. They're bombarded with people that want to get pictures and look at the ring and comment on the dress. And guys are talking about how the Cubs are doing this year. It's like, it's just like they're oblivious to so many things. That's why you just have to let go and trust and hire great vendors that care, and let everything else be everything else.
I agree 100%. Finding those people that care. And like you're saying with the anxiety, that just means that you care how the event turns out.
Absolutely.
So is there anything else that we didn't talk about today that you wanted to cover?
No, I appreciate the opportunity just to speak with you. I am a big fan of anybody that is out there doing things on a consistent basis, and what your business stands for and what this podcast stands for. I think there's so much impact that comes with this, and having a resource for other DJs or event professionals to listen to something that gives different insights and opinions on things, specifically like a topic with dry weddings. I think that's really important. So I'm thankful to be a part of your journey, and the process that you're developing, I think is really, really cool.
Thanks, Riley. I appreciate that. So how can people find you and contact you?
Yeah, well, I would say if anybody has any questions on anything that I brought up in this podcast, first and foremost, you can email me. It's just, we'll do the easy one. So it's info@rileymullane.com. I check my emails all the time. You can direct message me on Instagram. I'm on Instagram probably more than any other platform. It's just @RileyMullane. So feel free to follow me there, or any questions, of course, message me there. Check out our podcast, the Ann and Ellis podcast. It's on YouTube. It's on Spotify. Anywhere you're going to listen to a podcast, it's going to be found there. And then my YouTube channel is, again, Riley Mullane. And that is very specific to, again, I'll say purpose-driven DJs. And again, would love to have you on and have a conversation about all the things that you're up to. So we need to make that happen.
That would be awesome. So, I know there's people listening and very few watching. How do you spell your last name, just so people know?
Last name is M-U, so M as in Mary, Mullane. Riley is Riley, Riley Mullane.
Very cool. Well, thanks, Riley, for being on the show. Stay tuned for future episodes of the Wedding Songs podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, and very few on YouTube as well. But thanks for listening, and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Wedding Songs podcast. Never miss a future episode. Subscribe today to our podcast. Follow us on Facebook @My Wedding Songs, and send us a message about playlists you would like covered.